Welcome back to another episode of Think Mighty. I'm very excited about this episode. We have an amazing guest lined up for you guys. She has a wealth of knowledge in building brands, demand generation, and I can't wait to hear about this and share it with you guys. Her name is Elizabeth Hague, and she comes from experience at Salesloft, a $2.3 billion tech company. She also worked at a very cool tech company as well, where she rebranded them, again, focused on demand gen and scaled that business up. So very excited to hear her story and share it with you guys. Elizabeth, welcome to Think Mighty.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome, very cool. Well, hey, this is our first time talking, even though we had some time to chat beforehand, but my producer, Andrew, is actually the person who found you and is very timely because somebody you know is actually going to be a guest as well, Bill from Focus Lab. But you beat him on the show.
It's a first.
So Andrew found you through another podcast. And so I wanted to ask you, just kick off the conversation. That podcast title was Protecting Revenue by Building Your Brand. And, you know, when I looked you up and I looked at your LinkedIn, I saw that same phrase utilized throughout your LinkedIn. So it must be something that you really believe in. And I wanted you to explain that a little bit further. What does that mean, protecting revenue by building brand?
Yeah, it's actually interesting you mentioned Bill, because Bill and I are chatting about this right now, about the lexicon of brand and how that's evolved over the last 15 years, you know, especially with the slicing and dicing of product versus brand versus comms versus PR. And it just feels kind of messy out in the market. So let me kind of explain at least my philosophy and the way that I'm looking at things from the perspective of building companies, right? So particularly smaller companies, you know, they're looking at where they should invest first. And oftentimes, you know, they go for the places that are the most obvious, rightfully so. You know, CEOs are making decisions that they need to scale up. So, 1 + 1 = 2. They should invest and double down in demand. Is that a wrong idea? Absolutely not. But my challenge is, you know, marrying product and brand. It's more about understanding the customer journey and creating customer obsession, understanding target market message, really getting into product market fit and understanding the customer where they are and what their challenges are. And then that ethos married into business strategy, business function, you know, business obsession, like how do we get these customers to think only of us? Those ideas feed into demand and dictate demand and you know, drive where those ads show up, drive where those emails get sent, drive the messaging behind those pieces.
Very cool. And so when you build a brand, you know, how do you see that being protective of the revenue? How does that actually affect the revenue?
So in my mind, you know, we're protecting revenue by essentially building from the ground up, from the very beginning. You know, a lot of companies that I enter into their, you know, employee or consult with them as an in-house person or an external expert. A lot of them have hit a growth point where they need to redo their brand. And that is, I'm going to tell you, like, with Salesloft, that was like a multi-million-dollar experience, you know, and we're at a stage in growth where, you know, you're looking at, you know, scaling from, at the time when I was at Salesloft, you know, 50 million to 100 million, you know, it's a very, very scary thing for the executives there to make that decision, you know, to completely overhaul the look and feel of a product that has momentum and is doing really well and has customer obsession already. You know, that is extremely expensive because now we're talking, they had a great in-office culture. Okay, just think about like the signage alone in an office of like how much money that is. Now tack on like developing a product, reskinning the whole thing, doing a whole website, doing all new messaging around it, explaining why did we rebrand, you know. That's intense work and that's an intense expense. So thinking about it from the very beginning, you know, saying to yourself as a CEO or a founder, you know, how best can I put my foot forward to not have to unwind brand debt or product debt or customer obsession debt, you know, in the next 5, 10, 15 years or however long it takes for you to, you know, get off the ground and rolling. You know, there's some building blocks in place to protect that revenue. So we're thinking long term.
Very cool. So you brought up a lot of things I want to talk to you about today. So I'm glad that you're already there. But I want to take a step back. Your career has been very interesting, at least to me. So I want to start from the beginning. What was your first job in marketing? Like, how did you get into this?
Yeah. Okay, great question. I have a degree in art, fine art, antiquated film photography. We're talking dark room, wet rooms, dark room. And so I graduated in a really tough economy. It's not unlike the economy we're experiencing right now. Shout out to the people who are, looking for jobs. It's rough out there. So I got on a marketing team right out the gate. It was for Vanity Fair Imagewear. So they're the conglomerate that owns Vans, Nautica, North Face, Reef, Wrangler jeans at the time. I think they sold Wrangler a while ago. Red Cap. So I got on this team as a designer, and I kind of looked around and was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And they said to me, don't worry, we'll teach you. And it became the first entrance into brand. And this is right when, I'm going to date myself, right when Facebook was becoming a thing. So, they basically sat me down and was like, this is what a major corporate, brand looks like. And this is how you grow it. And this is how you get people to follow you and fall in love. And I took that and ran with it and created a great career out of it. So it's been 15 years. I feel hopefully the filter is doing its job.
We're the same age, so don't say how long we've all been working.
Oh yeah, no worries. It's so strange. They keep asking me, a 32-year-old, what I'm doing for my 40th birthday this year. And I'm like, that's such a bizarre question for someone of my age.
Right? What an incredible first job. You got to work at Vanity Fair, which happens to own all these major brands. So
Yeah.
what an opportunity you had. You got to work on some really cool brands right out of the gate, and multiple ones, right? So that's
Yes.
very cool.
Yes.
And then I want to take a jump in your career. You went to a company called, is it Crazy Rumors?
Oh, so I went to a company right after that. I got headhunted for a very small forum, believe it or not. Again, dating myself is back in the days when people would pay to be in a community that was specialized. It still exists today. It's still a business model today. You've got your pavilions of the world, which is, I am obsessed with pavilion. So it's not dissimilar to that, where they would throw events and have, industry experts come in but it was an online forum. And so I got picked up there as one of 3 people to rebrand them, redevelop them, appeal to a younger audience. They wanted to expand their audience. That eventually got acquired. That was my first exit. So they eventually got acquired by Turn River Capital. But yeah, and that experience, just learning from the corporate side of things and getting into I'm talking going 0 to 1. It was tiny. There was very, very few resources. And then for them to get picked up and acquired, that was the groundwork for me running my own business after that, which was an incredible experience.
Very awesome. What were some things that you recall that you were able to do at such a foundational point in a business with limited resources? What were things you were doing that were working really well?
Yeah, at the time it was all guerrilla marketing, right? It was partnerships and community buildings, and that was the ethos of that brand anyways. It was conversation. So it in a lot of ways was the groundwork for understanding and marrying that product and brand idea for protecting revenue. Because if you have every dollar counts, and it was a tough economic time, what do we do to get people interested, falling in love with the brand? We're going to make changes in order to appeal to a larger audience. How do we map those changes to the audience we want to appeal to? Really going out, testing those things. And that it had more to do with looking at the landscape and just focusing on where do we put our dollars that make the most sense and get rid of the things that don't make sense. So things like writing weekly blogs, that we let that go in favor of chasing after, these really large partnerships. So I did large partnerships with Canon, WPPI, B&H Photo, just a large Adorama. If anyone here is a photographer, they'll like, those names will ping for them. If you're not, it's like, those are the rock stars of the photography industry. So yeah, I mean, it was like, we're not going to publish, weekly blogs or worry about like, posting on Facebook. We're going to focus on like, how do we expand and how do we like grow our audience, and let's chase after the things that work and then do those repeatable things.
That's great. I love that. So I guess after that, you went to Crazy Rumor.
I own my own business, and then I was
You
an
own your
interim
own
director
business?
I was an interim director at Crazy Rumor. Crazy Rumor is amazing. Yeah, their product, their health and beauty product. So
Yeah. And then Salesloft.
So 7 years of owning my own business, basically doing exactly what we're talking about, marrying product with brand, doubling down on demand, creating integrated campaigns, talking to businesses about making major changes, really understanding their target audience, sometimes expanding into target audiences. For you mentioned Crazy Rumors a couple of times. That one's been one of my absolute favorite examples of the work that I've done. I've touched 115 brands over my career, just like helping them build. And Crazy Rumors is a great example because it's kind of the creme de la creme of like all the examples of the small things I do for clients or whatever. But essentially what ended up happening with them is they wanted to expand their audience and they didn't know how to do it. And they asked me to do target market research and really map out their product for a new audience. Again, similar story, like same thing again, bringing the brand with them because they wanted to make sure the brand looked and felt correct because their goals were like getting into Target, getting into Whole Foods, getting on to Walmart, expanding into EMEA, getting into Australian, health and beauty stores. So it was like, great, big task, big ask, let's do it. And we were really successful. We were able to get into Whole Foods retail and get shelf space there because of the work that we did expanding audiences and bringing the brand along with us and making organic changes that didn't hurt their brand. So, and then all the other like email campaigns and just all of the, because I sat with them as a fractional marketing leader because they were, again, going from 0 to 1, like trying to break that 1 million point. And it was an incredible experience. They were fantastic.
That's awesome. What were some challenges? Because what we're going to talk about later is going to be primarily B2B SaaS or technology, right? What were some challenges you faced at a CPG brand that maybe weren't in a B2B SaaS setting?
Yeah, so CPG is not as quick as SaaS. So SaaS, you can throw out ads, your sales cycle is, less than, sometimes if you get a demo and you get people in, you can get, book right on that demo, that call, right? With CPG, it's not like that, you've got some similarities where, SaaS, you've got competitors trying to eat your lunch, so to speak, constantly. CPG is like that too. It's even more competitive. It's like the new next now. You're fighting for POP, like point of purchase, like shelf space. If you're ugly and there's a better brand that's next to you, like you're going to be duking it out. Your sales are going to suck. So the big major difference though is that, if you think about it from the perspective of like physical store shelf versus, digital ramp time, like those are wildly different. But, understanding that business structure is the most important thing because you can see throughout my career that I'm chameleon. I've worked with lots and lots of different business models. And it all kind of goes back to the same thing we're talking about. It's marrying product with brand, understanding the business strategy, understanding the customer's sales cycle and what jobs to be done there are, what challenges that customer is facing, and then being really ruthlessly smart about it.
Nice. Very cool. So you had your own business for 7 years, you said?
Yeah.
What were some highlights there? Give us some highlights from that.
Well, on a personal level, my husband was working at E-Trade when I started my business, and he was able to leave his corporate job and join me, and he launched a completely new career in engineering and software engineering because of the business, which was incredible. So that just on a personal level, that was awesome. We bought a house, we traveled, we just did so many cool things with the business, and that's all personal stuff. From a career perspective, I think I alluded to this, but I touched over 100 brands. And that is incredible for me to be able to say I've been able to take an inside look at so many business models, good, bad, ugly, amazing, and like talk to people at different stages of development and really dig in with them around, what is working, what's not, what do you want to do, what's your future, and just building something for people who are obsessed with, whatever their idea is and helping them launch it or help them grow it. Yeah, I mean, there's just 7 years of 100+ brands, a lot to dig in there.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one of the perks of being on the agency side, right? Like you get to see all different types of companies. I guess, they say the grass isn't greener on the other side. People in the agency want to work for a brand. People in a brand want to work for an agency.
Yeah.
But one of the things
That's just
I
how it
really
is.
like about it is that you get to see so many different types of businesses and you get to dig into their business and understand it. And you wouldn't have that opportunity, unless you owned your own business, your own consulting firm, your own agency. So I can
Absolutely.
definitely identify with that. And so then from there, did you then move into Salesloft? What was
Yes.
it? How did that happen?
Yeah. So, full transparency. Actually, I'm in a book about when it's called When to Jump by Mike Lewis. Sheryl Sandberg wrote the foreword to that, so that name probably pings a few ears. But I talk a little bit about like business failures and transitions and stuff. So with Wildcat was my business. It's still around. I still consult under it. I built it when I was 25, when I didn't know. I mean, it was right after that forum got acquired, and it kind of launched my career. I was a baby. I built it in a way that didn't scale. And people kept asking for me by name. Like it would write in contracts, I want Elizabeth to be on. And at the height of it in 2019, I had 30 clients, 5 to 7 freelancers working with me. And now all of those 30 clients wanted me on their contracts. So your girl was like, I think I need to step away from this and maybe focus on the things that I love. Because I was also doing like growth, I was like growing my business and, like marrying my own ethos to like get more clients, and it was going really well. So I was like, there's only so much of me to go around. So I had made the really tough decision to kind of, unwind that. And it's such a weird story because, you think, what happens when you're too successful but you build it in the wrong way? Is it a failure or is it a success? It's just a really strange kind of, in one way it's part one and part the other, right? So that's how I ended up in-house at Salesloft. They were doing a rebrand and I was like, I have those skills.
Nice. Perfect opportunity, huh?
Absolutely. And it was, I started March 2020, so couldn't have been better timing.
Nice, nice. So let's talk about that. So when you came into Salesloft, where was Salesloft in the decision process of a rebrand? Had they already made that decision? Were you brought in before the decision was made?
Yeah, I was brought in right as they were looking for someone to lead the rebrand. And so they were at the 50 million mark and shooting for 100 million. I recently just had a dinner with my old boss from Salesloft, and she had mentioned that it was something crazy now. It's been like 4+ years since I've been there, but she said that it's something insane now, like 350 million or 500 million ARR. And their like next pathway is they're shooting for 1 billion ARR, which is like, oh my God, like insane, right? Very cool, very, very cool. But yeah, that was, I joined right between the 50 to 100 million mark. So definitely different than the smaller businesses going from 0 to 1. And it was really interesting to see, what that growth was like there.
Yeah, very cool. So what was the reason for the rebrand? Why was Salesloft looking to rebrand at that point?
They were trying to go IPO. They had so much headwind and momentum. People really loved the product, but the look and feel of the product and the, experience was just not up to par with the quality that they could and were providing their customers. They really needed a more mature customer experience, because that customer experience it was hurting them in the long run. So they were thinking long term. They wanted to IPO and they wanted to be on that main stage. They ended up getting acquired by Vista Equity Group, and that's where that valuation comes from, that 2.3 billion valuation. And that was my last exit.
Very cool. So they wanted to improve the user experience, improve the customer experience. I assume they wanted to get on another level with competitors, bigger companies. And so what was sort of the success metric that you were tasked with? What did the leadership say? If you do this, it'll be a success.
So it was really interesting at the time. The CMO and VP, who I reported to the VP, they were really adamant about, developing a look and feel that was mature, that really mapped towards what the customer should expect from the product. So working with product was really, really important, really understanding, like where their customer, headwinds were coming, like what was being said out in the wild. We did a ton of social media listening, so as far as like the KPIs for this, essentially they were looking at brand awareness and category leadership. They wanted to be that number one. They wanted to be up and high and to the right on the wave, they wanted to be dominant. And so really it was more like, if we do this rebrand, we do it well, we do it right, it will only give us even more of the space to own this entire category. We want to own the category, and we want to be the creme de la creme in this quadrant, essentially. Talking about like, Forrester waves and all that kind of stuff. So that the success metric was, are we dominating? Are we category leaders? Are we being mentioned? Are we being, out in the wild organically? When we do social listening, what compared to our competitors? So there was a lot of KPIs that kind of, unfolded underneath, that cascaded underneath those. But really it was all about brand domination and category leadership.
Very interesting. Yeah. I mean, I remember following Salesloft. I had a friend of mine who worked there probably around the same time, because when he was there, it had not been rebranded. It was pretty early on.
Yeah.
But the brand wasn't, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't awful, right? I mean, they got to where they got to 50 million ARR with what they had.
Exactly.
But I guess that won't, what got you to 50 million won't get you to 100 million, right?
Yeah. And I think too, having the discussion around what brand really is, and understanding, that's why I'm always pushing, like, brand is not just design. Brand is business strategy. Brand is product strategy. Brand leads the way for demand. Brand and product together is a win. And that's why I like marrying those concepts together. It's why I as a person, yes, brand is my specialty, but like, I have a deep understanding and a lot of experience in product. In a lot of ways, to me, they're synonymous. They're married. They're together. You can't have one without the other. So, if you are looking at your product and you're getting customers like bouncing or not renewing, and they're going to competitors, and you're starting to see maybe a leak somewhere, it's like the question needs to be asked. You need to talk to your customers, like, if the experience was better, if it was more mature, if it was smoother, if it was faster, if it just delighted you more, would you have stayed? And then that's like money that you're renewing right there. That's one customer you don't have to market to, one customer you don't have to like get on a phone call, one more, so it's about that like connective ethos. It's not just about the design. It's do you like using this thing? It's like people move on to stuff that feels and looks better or is a better experience because it's not a pain in the butt to, like, how many products have you dumped off for a competitor that you're just like, I hate clicking around here,
Yeah. I will pick a digital product. I will pick that has a better user experience, even if it doesn't have the same functionality. Like, I'll figure out I'll be like, well, I can feed it through Zapier maybe and get my outcome, right? I'll figure it out, but I will pick the thing that looks and feels better because it's something I have to interface with on a daily basis. And I don't want to have to, like, it almost like, makes your day worse logging into something that looks clunky and you're like, oh God, this is not like my business. This is not what I want. I want to move over to this thing. This is more aligned with who I am and where I'm going. And so I've made decisions like that many a times with business, technology, whatever it is. I'll pick the thing that makes my life better.
Yes. And I do that all the time. I'm not I'm kind of brand agnostic, which is kind of weird to say as a brand person, but because I've been in the industry so long, I'm like, I want a company to understand personalization and cater to my needs. Now, my needs are going to be different than other people's needs, and that's what, differentiation is all about. It's about understanding what product market fit we have and how many customers are out there in order to appeal to those customers. But if the product speaks to you and your user experience is incredible and the brand comes through, in a way that's just so accessible, and it's a harmony of all of these components together, because it's not just brand, it's product, it's demand, those ads that speak to you, it's, like, did the engineers, put the button in the right place because it's not a pain in the butt, like I keep clicking yes instead of no, those kinds of, does it feel good? Do they understand like you said, do I have to work around and get a Zapier? Oh, like, praise Zapier, thank God they exist, but also,
Yeah.
So all of that culminates together.
Right. So, question for you. If the brand and the experience is not on par, it's not where it needs to be, how does that affect demand gen?
Oh my God. It makes demand gen so hard because, demand gen isn't necessarily about quick wins. It is very much a quick win thing. You can learn a lot from running ads and, managing channels and getting messages out there very fast, especially in B2B SaaS. But it's also about that long-term look. It's like, if I'm running these ads, how am I going to be doing this in 5 months, 6 months, a year? The increased cost of not having good brand awareness, it just eats at that budget. It is like, it's kind of, trading one for the other in a way of, if you are just focused on demand gen and you're not, investing in product and brand and marrying those like target market messages into demand, then you're really only buying a certain amount of time before you have to do the next part of it. And I think that's the trouble, is that people say, I've got a runway of this, and if I can get all these leads in, then maybe I can, but you need to be doing it now. It just makes it so, lack of brand awareness, lack of good experience, lack of customer obsession, lack of understanding of customers. It just eats at the cost. It is so expensive to run these ads, and especially if they're not effective. Like, oh my God, it's horrible.
Yeah. So I think everything you just said really answers that initial question of like protecting the revenue. You mentioned like if the experience isn't good, you're losing customers. If they're not delighted and enjoying what they're doing, you're losing customers. If it doesn't look good and it's not attractive, they're not converting on the demand gen side, which means it's just costing you more money.
Oh my God.
So all of these things are tied back to sort of your ethos of protect the revenue by building the brand.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're also thinking about, growth too, growth opportunities. If you're looking at it from a perspective of like, where else in my business can I maximize growth? And you're taking a look at it holistically as a CEO or a leader, like I alluded to with Salesloft, like, you asked why they matured their brand, and thinking about renewals, growth opportunities there exist where, yes, I was able to get somebody hooked on my brand, my initial brand and their experience, whatever it is right now. What if I delighted them? What if I increased their obsession with what I'm doing, and that helps because now we don't have to spend dollars getting them back. We can focus on, customer success, pampering them, inviting them places, giving them better experiences, talking to them on a regular basis, sending those emails that keep us top of mind, that classic category leadership experience, And I think that can be applied all the way down in small levels of like if you're a 0 to 1 or a seed or, like these are things that a smart marketer who understands growth and small business, they're going to look at those kinds of things and leverage the brand in a way. Even if the brand's, hey, maybe it's not mature yet, you can still leverage these things. Because like you mentioned, Salesloft made it to 50 million with a logo that was not great. But it's all about closing that customer experience and creating obsession and then maturing it along the way.
Very cool. Yeah. So Salesloft, hopefully everybody that's listening is familiar with Salesloft, but I kind of followed their journey in Atlanta. I think they were in the tech village, right?
Yes, they were. Mm-hmm. This was way before me, but yes.
Yeah. And so, they've gone from literally like zero to massive.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. They did
and so
amazing.
then,
They did amazing
so
work.
then after that, you went to Very.
Yep. I was at Salesloft for a year, and then I had an opportunity to go in-house to own more of the landscape at a smaller company. So at Salesloft, my vertical was just brand, and as you can hear from what I'm talking about, like I'm very much a mindset of like large global, like I want to talk more about the growth aspect of things. I'm very deeply involved in product and messaging and targeting. So I said to myself, like, this is great. This has been an amazing experience, and they're like skyrocketing. My work here is done. I'm going to go to a smaller company. It was, I think, Very was maybe 12 million ARR. So like we scaled it down, because the CMO at the time was like, look, I'm building a team from scratch, and I need help rebuilding this brand, and we're targeting enterprise customers, and how do we do this, and how can you help me? So I saw such an amazing opportunity to kind of marry all of those talents and skills that I had developed over years and years and years, and really bring this to life at a company where I was like, oh, we could do so much here. This is amazing. It's a cool opportunity.
Very cool. So when you went to Very, even though it was, 12 million AR is not tiny, right?
Oh, it's something to sneeze at. Yeah, they were doing
Yeah.
good.
So was it like you just picked up your Salesloft playbook and you're like, I got this, or was there anything that you had to tailor it to Very for?
Oh my God, playbook. You said the word. You said the magic word. Um, there is no playbook. That's the secret, I think, right? Like there's no playbook. I think after touching so many brands and working on so many target market messages, and yes, there's an excellence to doing things, a surgical excellence to doing things, but each time you get into a company, it's not a play. There's no like 1 + 1 = 2. You start over again. You bring your experiences with you, your battle scars, your learnings, your failures, your wins, but that just informs decisions. That doesn't create the playbook, right? There's no playbook.
Nice. I think you just probably dispelled one of the biggest myths of the executive teams and C-suites that they're looking for. They probably expect that, right? They think people just walk in with this secret playbook,
I wish that would be
right?
amazing, right? Like, it's so complicated. Humans are complicated beasts, right? Like, and work is hard, and business models are run by humans, so it's complicated, But I think if you are a smart marketer, the excellence, the activities of excellence, and what makes. If you've seen a lot and you've experienced a lot, you bring that with you, and that's your history. But it's different each time. You can tailor, yes, like, hey, I've seen this before and it's not gone well, like, so avoid this, but there is no like just a template. There's no
Yeah.
template. There really isn't.
You can't just go download the template? Man.
Oh, I wish. God, like, you know how much money I would make? Oh my God. I would immediately gate that thing, and I'd have like millions of emails. I'd be a boss. Like, I'd be just
Everybody
so.
just click the link below. There's a template.
Yes, buy my course now for $99 a month. Like,
Yeah.
I would be
That's awesome.
amazing. You
Very
want to get
funny.
on this? Let's go. Like, you and
Yeah,
I, let's do it together.
We'll do a rev share plan. We'll talk about this later.
Yeah. We'll cut this out. We're going to create a whole new business. No, it doesn't exist. And if someone is selling it to you, like, question it. Like, sorry. It's true, though. It's more about buying that person's experience, right? And that is helpful, so, but still, like.
Very cool. So when you rebranded Very, I'm not familiar with what their brand looked like before. Explain again, what was the circumstance there? What were they trying to achieve?
Yeah. So I typically, if you look at my career, you'll see that I typically get picked up to do the hard thing. It's a lot of change management, a lot of we're going a new direction, or we're targeting a new market. What do we do? And then sometimes it culminates in a rebrand. Sometimes it's more about redeveloping their market and redeveloping their messaging, it falls under the umbrella of brand and brand strategy, communication, and all that kind of stuff. But for Very, they were looking to kind of upscale into enterprise sales. They had some amazing headwinds already. They Peloton. They were talking to Braun. They worked with Interstate Batteries, like some really big names, and some really cool projects. Clear facial recognition. Like. It's really, really cool. So it was an IoT engineering services firm, but it was end to end. They did hardware, software, firmware. They helped really provide services for these large enterprise companies. And it was a completely different business model than your B2B SaaS. B2B SaaS is very like you put an ad out, you get a demo, 7 days to close, or less, you get your people in, you've got your less than 20% booking rate, or whatever, 10% booking rate. And you're like, yeah, we're doing great. 10% is amazing. But for this business model for enterprise, it was very different. Sales cycle of 180 days, your close rate was upwards of 50 to 60% because you were building all of this trust. So having product, having an understanding of target market, really understanding like the wins and losses there and your brand story was just, you had to. There was no way. You had to.
Very cool. So what were you mentioned enterprise, and I think in your LinkedIn it says $5 million accounts, $20 million lifetime value. These are the types of accounts you're going after. What's the demand gen for that? What's the strategy that you implemented there for those types of accounts?
If you are in the enterprise sales world, it is a totally different ball of wax than a SaaS. SaaS is more, exciting, and you can do splashy campaigns. You can do out of home office, like these beautiful billboards. You can, buy this really cool, like New York Times or New York Square, or, like little digital ad, and like throw people up on there and do really cool things like that, and like have these cool email campaigns and get all these downloadable guides and like just make it really fun and interesting and splashy and exciting and fast. So things are constantly changing, these ads are constantly changing. For enterprise sales, it's very different. It's more about founder-led. It's more relationship-based. It's more customer success. It's more about, gifting and dinners and steak and scotch and cigars and golf course and handshakes and winks and showing up at the same place. These mega superstars are showing up and rubbing elbows with them and having a presence. And so it's an interesting world, an interesting mix for demand gen, because yes, we did do channel ads. Those were very successful because you have an ABM strategy. It's all about ABM, right? And partnerships. So you want to show up where these people are, online. But if you're not like in some physical space or really focusing on, getting those one-to-one conversations going, getting that like recommendation, or, my friend said this firm was what, then you're behind on the 8 ball in brand.
Very cool. What was the hardest thing at either Salesloft or Very? Like, what was the hardest thing about both of those rebrands that like maybe you didn't see coming, or that most people wouldn't have guessed as a challenge?
Yeah. Salesloft was such an incredible experience. I'm so grateful I got to work with the leadership there. They taught me every single thing I would ever need to know about adoption and internal momentum and getting people to fall in love with a change, which is not easy to do. Now, I was an expert in change management before, but running change management, helping, companies make those changes, it was not like having 500 employees, basically 1,000 eyes staring at you saying, why are we changing this? I love the old brand and I hate change. Kudos to the leadership there. They really world class on change management and getting people to adopt internally and get that internal momentum to embrace and love and obsess over something that they didn't have to, So they did some incredible work. So that was the biggest challenge, because if you make a big change at your company, doesn't matter what it is, if you don't have employees backing you, it could go real bad, real fast, like real bad. Because if the salespeople don't believe, that's going to pass on into sales calls, and that's going to, oh my God. And if your demand gen leader doesn't believe, then those ads are not gonna, it's just not gonna, or your product person doesn't believe, then it's just, the messaging is gonna be, it's gonna be gross. So they did incredible work.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I think that's one thing that a lot of people maybe don't consider, because when we think about branding, we think about external image, external experiences, customers, right? But if you think about the internal impact, so what you're talking about is what could go wrong, but on the flip side, it's what could go right, right? So what if 500 employees are just like super energized, they're like on level 11, excited about their job now, whereas previously they were maybe, I don't know, maybe they were looking for a new job, right? They're kind of burned out. They're like, I don't see where this is going. There's this other cool company out there that's doing cool stuff. But then you rebrand and you breathe more energy back into the company. And now everybody's like, oh, we're going somewhere. This is actually, we're doing something big. And then they take that energy out into the marketplace.
And we're circling back around to revenue protection, because retaining employees, retaining customers, doesn't matter, thinking about retention, right? It's easier to retain happy employees and give them an experience that they feel proud to embody. And, the mission, vision, values align with them. It makes them, like you were saying, a little bit more interested in their jobs, a little bit more, there's an ability there, there's re-energizing, re-interest with the company, like giving them something to celebrate, sending them new swag, or, giving them new materials, fresh materials to go out on a sales call, and they have these beautiful pitch decks, because it just makes their job so much easier, like clunking around before with these pitch decks that just kind of like didn't work or was funky, or, there's so much to dive into just from the employee perspective around revenue retention and employee happiness. It's like, how can we make your job easier by understanding what your problems are and making those disappear, right? So it's, again, really understanding that this brand thing is a lot more than people really give it credit for, I think.
Right. We were talking the other day internally, and we were talking about how branding makes sales effortless. And so, like you just mentioned, the sales team has a good looking pitch deck. They have good looking materials. It makes their job easier. I mean, makes the customer want to do business with them. They don't have to work as hard. They're attracting these people in. And so they're closing deals faster, getting more customers. Just helps everybody out.
It's all about experience. And so if you can give a world-class experience, if you can close a customer in a way that makes that customer feel like a champion, a hero, and then you feel so good about your job, because you're not just stuck in an office cold calling all day, and just getting just the door slammed in your face constantly. It feels different being on a winning team, doesn't it? We've all been on losing teams before, and we've all been on winning teams. There's definitely a difference in feel, look, experience, brand, how people talk, how people embody and embolden the mission and vision. It's just a completely different experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, Elizabeth, what brand are you watching? What brand would be somewhere you would want to go? Would it be a big company, or do you really like the small brands? What would be your bread and butter? The thing that you would be like, man, if I could go do that, that'd be awesome.
I'm a kind of a busybody in the sense of as you can, from this conversation, I'm looking at growth, I'm looking at product, I'm looking at brand, I'm looking at demand, and marrying those things together. I'm looking for my next home right now, actually. I'm looking at companies between, 3 to 5 million, all the way up to 25, and a little bit beyond that. People are looking more for a leader who is interested in marrying the product with the brand, and interested in filtering those messages down to demand, and are interested in someone who's looking out for the strategy of the company. I would never be opposed to going to a larger company. I think it would be very cool to run an entire brand team for some major corporation. But I think I would be happiest at a place that is interested in looking at it from that holistic perspective, the end-to-end perspective. If you're familiar with Jocko, he just wrote a new book, Architecture, Revenue Architecture. Got to get the title right. It's brand new. His bow tie model, for SaaS, B2B SaaS companies, where it kind of expands on both sides. I don't know if you're familiar with this. Whoever is listening to this, go get the book. It's amazing. For people who are looking at that revenue model all the way through, that's the ideal place for me. Like, I want to work with leaders who are interested in closing the loop, not just like, how do we get MQLs to SQLs and we don't care about anything else, growth at all costs, I think that time is starting to end. I think people are looking for more connectivity and long-term growth.
Very cool. So based on your experience, I mean, you've had tons of experience working with a variety of companies. What would you say are the things that companies need to look for, or what would be a sign that they need to rebrand and rethink the branding of their company?
Yeah, I mean, a sign that things are not going well is lack of renewals, people dumping off, your service. If you're a services company, people dumping off, people switching brands. We were talking about like, I just went to this other thing because it's clicking around and awful. I don't want to. So if your customer bucket on the customer success end is just like, is starting to get empty, I would really pull back. Does it mean that you need to completely rebrand? No. I think you need to look at product strategy, and I think you need to look at brand strategy and really take a hard, deep, critical look at those two and how that's impacting your business strategy. Are you successful? Are you communicating your value? Is your product, seamless, easy to use? What's the experience like? Are employees dumping off of your company? Is this a crappy place to work? I think those CEO decisions need to be, made in that area. So if you're seeing those red flags or even pink flags, like very almost red flags kind of pop up, I think it's time to relook at the brand and the product strategy and the other demand, if your ads are getting more and more and more expensive every single quarter, got a problem.
There you go. And what in demand gen, like, I mean, it changes so fast. What have you seen that maybe worked previously but isn't working now, and now there's this new thing? Is there anything that you've seen that's new or that you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on organic and paid SEO strategy, especially with AI, generative AI coming into the scene. I think it's really, really important to like really monitor the cost and understand like how one may cannibalize the other, and make a critical question of, do we need to keep investing in paid SEO versus organic, and is this going to help us in the long run? Like, what is organic doing now that we've got all of these AI overview from Google? It depends on your business model. Like enterprise sales probably not going to hurt you that much. Those are very precise Google searches, very, very precise SEO keywords. Boolean queries are very precise. But those SaaS companies, yeah, that's the place that I would be like kind of poking around at, is like, okay, ad strategy, how is AI impacting, like what's going on with organic versus paid? Are we really putting enough into organic to show up, and is it working? Oh gosh, you can really unpack that that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Well, Elizabeth, this has been great. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. It was very exciting to hear about your journey working with Salesloft, all the companies that you've touched and had an impact on growing them. So looking forward to following your career and staying in touch, and the next company you take to the moon.
I'm excited. I can't wait. Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again, Elizabeth, and we'll stay in touch, and stay tuned for the episode with Bill, and we'll get to hear what he says about the rebrands.
Yeah, can't wait.